Hello and welcome or welcome back. My name is Sydney Ward. I am the energy healer and intuitive guide behind Lake Anima Intuitive Wellness. There are a lot of parts of my practice: energy healing, tarot reading, work with crystals and sound, but a big one that's part of my personal practice that I feel so blessed to be able to share with the world and the people around me is the moon, moonology, working with the moon's phases and the different signs that it moves through and working with that energy. So today we're going to talk about the full moon in Scorpio. Now, full disclosure, in Western astrology, I have a Scorpio moon. So it's one that I'm, rather familiar with. And I feel pretty comfortable saying Scorpio full moons can be rather intense. And Scorpio moon women can be kind of intense. But, we're kind of a big deal. My moon sisters include Isadora Duncan, Beyonce, Lady Gaga, J-Lo, I think Scarlett Johansson has a Scorpio moon, and even the wildly misrepresented, widely misunderstood Lilith herself is believed to be a Scorpio moon. So, that said, let's get into it. I want to start by first talking about the full moon in general. When the moon is full, the moon and the sun are separated 180 degrees, or they're exactly opposite each other relative to the earth. Those are the two forces that exact the most gravity on earth, so it can create this feeling of tension or feeling like, something's got to give. And with that, it can be tempting to react from a place of hurt or to respond to things in a really big way. And I won't say that that's wrong. I would just say that what I found to be most helpful and most nourishing is to instead focus on the energy of the full moon, which is release and forgiveness. When we focus on those things and look at this opportunity, right? The moon is at its peak and is about to start waning, right? It's a time to let go of things that aren't serving us. And when we focus on that element of the full moon, we empower ourselves to act from a place of true intention and integrity. And for me, that's really what this work is about, is finding a way to love ourselves more fully, to enrich our spaces and to enrich our relationships with others. And I think that taking that tension and using that as a light to focus on what we're ready to release, who we're ready to forgive, even if that's ourselves, and what we're really ready to let go of and move on from, is a really important piece of that process. So as I mentioned, Scorpio moons have a reputation for intensity. They are sort of like peak full moon, like the kind of typical full moon. It's kind of like peak that. Scorpio moon energy is deeply sensate. It's a catalyst for change. It has a knack for turning the things that are kind of hidden or behind the scenes into something that's very visible, or bringing it forward. There can be a sense of magnetism and clarity, along with willfulness and sometimes overly passionate emotions. Scorpio moon energy, though, invites us to remember that true security, like thinking about security of self, comes from self-awareness and inner trust. It invites us to embrace mystery instead of treating it like an adversary, like something we need to sort out, and helps us to recognize that change and intensity go hand in hand. You cannot have change without intensity. So with that, let's talk about what your full moon in Scorpio practice might include. So these things are invitations for you, and things that I do during a Scorpio full moon for myself, that really harness this particular unique energy of this phase, the full moon, in this sign, Scorpio. So first thing is to ask investigative questions of yourself and others. And the caveat that I'll put on that is without being attached to the answers, right? When you're asking investigative questions, and investigative questions being like deep, sincere questions about the truest levels of your beings, right? When you're asking of yourself, that's one thing. When we're asking these questions to other people, it should come from a place of showing up to listen, and not as like a way to get secret information or as a space of judgment. If you feel like you aren't able to walk into that conversation with someone else, and honor whatever shows up for them without being reactive to it, then just focus on yourself. Just ask questions to you. So these questions, investigative questions, some that I like, and these are ones that I like to work with the Scorpio moon in particular, is have I been engaged with any toxic behavior? So sometimes we hear toxic behavior and we immediately think like really extreme scenarios, but this can also be things like toxic positivity. This can be habits that we know are toxic to our health that we've re-engaged with. This can be more extreme things like spiritual bypassing or racism or emotional abuse. This question is really an invitation to like recognize at whatever level you're ready where you might be engaged on some level with toxic behavior or supporting toxic structures. Another question is, how have I been living from a place of fear? Or I guess both, how have I been living from a place of joy? So recognizing where in your life like fear is leading you, and recognizing where in your life joy is guiding you, and see if we can put more things in the joy column. Another question is like looking at your emotional state and just being honest with yourself. Like, have I been brooding? Have I been really focused on the positive or the negative? This is a good one if you have a business partner or a life partner, whether it's like a romantic partner or a friend partner, right? Life partners are not only the people we're married to. Asking this question of each other, like, have I been focused on the positive or the negative? What have you been seeing? And being honest reflections for each other. Another one, Scorpio can be kind of steamy. Has your sex life been fulfilling? And I'm going to take this little tiny opportunity to, this has come up a few times in the past few weeks in my practice with clients. And even with the new moon in Taurus, when we talk about sex, and people's different sexualities, it's something that I think sometimes we assume that everyone wants to be having more sex. And not that that's wrong, because that can definitely be a thing and that's very valid. And if that's you, own it. But not everyone is a sexual creature. Some people are asexual or demisexual, or just in general, their sexual appetites are different from ours. So recognize that, and by ours, I mean mine. So recognize that there isn't like a sexual format or checklist that you need to abide to in any way. Whatever is right for you, whatever is fulfilling for you specifically, is what this question points to. So asking, has my sex life been fulfilling, is going to mean much different things to different people. And know that it's not a question designed to say like your sex life needs to look like this or that. It's inviting you to investigate what a fulfilling sex life would be for you. And the last one is looking at, how do I communicate my emotional needs, and could I do so more effectively? So as I said that sounded very clinical. But this is a real consideration. Scorpio energy can be very like emotionally flagrant, I think is what I want to say. And it's a really good time, like seeing what's bubbling up, to ask, how have I been communicating these things to the people around me? How have they been receiving it? Is there a way that I could communicate my emotional needs more effectively? And now, full moon in Scorpio is a perfect time to test run that. So if you think, okay, maybe if I tried it this way, full moon in Scorpio, everything in bright light, everyone being a little more in tune with their emotions, it's a really good time to try that different method or tweaked, altered method of communicating those needs. So that was like the longest one, asking investigative questions of yourself and others without attachment to the answers, and some suggestions for those questions. So the second thing, I know it seems like it should be the seventh thing. The second thing is to share your feelings. Share your feelings specifically in a safe environment. So this is kind of what I was getting at the tail end of the last one. It's a perfect time to allow yourself to be open about what you're feeling, but be specific. Don't just like hop on Facebook and be like, these are all my feelings. Like, that's not it. Identify people that you really trust, whether it's a small group or, again, a partner, or maybe there's an event. Like, for example, small shameless plug, I'm hosting a virtual full moon circle next week. Or, whenever you see this, when the full moon is in Scorpio. And for me, when I attend events like that and when I host events like that, it really is a safe space for everybody who shows up to show up fully and vulnerably as themselves, and to be able to explore and share what they're experiencing. So maybe it's something like that. The third thing, and this is the fun one, this is the one I'm excited about, is to do something wild or mysterious. Full moon in Scorpio is like the perfect moon to just go like dance under the moon. Maybe there's like some wild sex thing you've been wanting to try out with your partner. Maybe you're doing that. It can also be like getting a tarot reading or booking a session with a medium, or just like anything that really embraces and instigates that kind of mysterious, wild side that we all have dormant within us. Well, sometimes less dormant. Who am I kidding? But yeah, like just do something wild. And if honestly, here I'm gonna be bold and say this: if there's nothing else that you do from this list, if you just pick one thing, do something wild. You should give yourself that treat of getting a little crazy under the full moon this year, yeah? So, as always, I also like to talk about anytime the moon is in Scorpio. So these daily moons are these suggestions for any time the moon, regardless of phase, is in the sign that we're talking about. The way that I use these is if I'm not quite sure what I want to do with the day, or basically that's it. If I'm not quite sure what I want to do with the day or where my energy would be best spent, I look at things like this to help guide me. So if I'm like, I don't know about today, I might look and see what sign the moon is in. And if the moon is in Scorpio, these are some things that I would consider doing. If these are things that are like not on your list, if I'm saying things and you're like, oh, I would never do that, ignore that. But you might hear some things that are like, oh yeah, I've been meaning to do that. I'm going to pencil that in for the next time the moon is in Scorpio, right? So starting with, we have a few different categories. I'm going to start with personal, just like personal practice kind of stuff. Moon in Scorpio is a great time to practice Kundalini or tantric breath, and some of those more like tantric esoteric practices. Pay attention to dreams and insights. Scorpio dreams are like especially poignant. So if you're a dreamer, pay attention, maybe start recording your dreams. Eat dark chocolate and drink red wine. That's like my favorite. Scorpio is like very resonant with the color of like red and anything that deeply instigates your senses in that way. So I definitely vibe with anything like that. Like I said before, full moon in Scorpio is a great time for a tarot reading, but any time the moon is in Scorpio is like a cool time to get a tarot reading. It's a good time always to embrace mystery, whether that's like reading a thriller or going to a haunted house or touring, like doing like one of those haunted tours. There's this vineyard in Kansas City where I used to live that's like low-key haunted. Like going there would be a great thing to do. Feel into and honor your emotions. That's like an always thing in Scorpio. It's a good time to do that. Give yourself the invitation to relax outdoors if you can, to get grounded, get things off your chest in a healthy way. And if it's available to you, it's a great time to spend some time in water, like going for a swim or having a beach day. Scorpio is a water sign, so that's like very typical, but really is a good time to go splash around. Moving into relationships and how we interact with others. Some things to consider doing when the moon is in Scorpio. It's a good time to hold like a confidential meeting or a rendezvous. It's the time when, if they're like, to share deep secrets with someone you trust, to be vulnerable with people. Put yourself in a position to meet people and notice who you meet and have like an instant connection with. Those are good people to keep around. Speak kindly from your heart, revealing those emotions. Always speak from a place of compassion, and be compassionately open with your feelings. Shifting to work and money, when the moon is in Scorpio, it's going to be a good time to work behind the scenes, do some of that back end stuff, or to be like doing sneaky things to support someone. It's also a great time to close a deal, especially when the moon is between full moon and the last quarter. Great time, moon in Scorpio in that time frame is a great time to close a deal. It's a good time, going back to those investigative questions, a little bit different perspective. It's a great time to ask your banker or your financial advisor, any sort of like planners, questions to ask them, like lots of questions. You're going to get the information that you need when the moon is in Scorpio. It is also an exceptional time to do any kind of research. So if there's something that you've been meaning to research, get more information on, moon in Scorpio, great time to do it. Moving into our home lives, which I don't know why, but I think this category is always my favorite. Moon in Scorpio is a great time to make a permanent move. It is a good time to undertake cleaning, unlike the moon in Taurus. It's a great time to undertake cleaning jobs that require a lot of water and elbow grease. So like washing your floors or your windows, or doing like a deep clean in your bathroom, like that kind of stuff. It's a good time to smoke cleanse or otherwise clear the energy in your home if smoke cleansing isn't your thing. You can also clear energy in your space with sound, with meditation, with crystals. If you have questions about like that kind of stuff specifically, feel free to reach out to me any way that you've got me. Also, open all the windows. I've done that today. The moon isn't in Scorpio the day that I'm recording this, but I think I was inspired by the energy. I just needed to open all of the windows in my house today. And literally every single one is open. So with all of those good, like juicy to-dos in different areas, always want to make note of a couple things to be mindful of when the full moon is in Scorpio, because it's not all like sunshine and daisies all the time, right? One is like, just be really mindful of intense emotions bubbling over. They're definitely probably going to bubble up, but just choose how they get released and try not to let things kind of like explode all over other people, right? Be mindful or avoid or notice where you might be trying to control a situation. See if you can let go of that a little bit. It's a time where sometimes we read too much into stuff. We think there are secrets hiding where there aren't. Be really aware of overspending, especially not just like spending money, but emotional spending. I know I'm really guilty of that a lot. So be mindful of that. And also try to, at all costs, try to avoid any kind of like stuffy atmosphere. It's probably going to drive you nuts. So that's our moon and Scorpio stuff. As with, this is going to be kind of a theme with all of the full moon introductions that we do. I'm going to talk about the polarity between our new moon in Taurus and the full moon in Scorpio. So if you have like information overload, now's a good time to check out. Love you. I'll see you next time. But if you're looking for a little bit deeper information in the overall energetic balance of the season, looking at the polarity of the new moon, which is where the sun is also, that energy and the full moon energy kind of gives us some really good things to consider and recognize in this season of our lives. So we've got the energy of Taurus, which, well, what Taurus and Scorpio have in common is they're both deeply resonant with their senses. They're very sensual and sense-based signs. So we really get to engage with that energy in some different ways. With Taurus, it's a lot more about like stability and grounding and comfort. And then with Scorpio, it's much more about like getting in it and embracing intensity and kind of like getting in it just like feels like the right the right word, the right phrase here. And so what we're invited to recognize or to seek is this balance between the kind of languid contentment of Taurus and the intensity of Scorpio. Like recognize what's ours. Taurus is really about like what's true to yourself and what you share with others. Scorpio really being about sharing your feelings and sharing your innermost parts with other people. Embracing sensuality and enjoying your senses, yes, but recognizing where you might be ruled by them, either them kind of anchoring you down and keeping you stagnant in Taurus or flaring you up in Scorpio. Noticing where we're really holding on to structure and stability just because it's safe, and where maybe there are some opportunities to immerse ourselves in life's intensity. And on the flip side of that, maybe it's too intense all the time, and we might be able to weave some more stability and structure into our lives in a meaningful way. And another big thing is like looking at the Taurus energy, which sometimes involves repeating the same patterns over and over, and asking how we can balance that with opportunities for deep transformation, which Scorpio really opens the door for us in. So yeah, really looking at that, like embracing the senses completely and recognizing like where are we being held down and where are we getting, I don't want to say too fired up because I really just like to believe there's no such thing. But where is intensity getting away from us? Where is it controlling us instead of the other way around? So yeah. With that, thank you so much for being here with me. Thank you so much for tuning in. If you have any questions about the moon, about the full moon in Scorpio, about anything that we've talked about today, I would love to hear from you. So please reach out. You can comment here. You can message me. You can contact me through the website. You can find me on Instagram, whatever works for you. And I'd love to know how you're going to celebrate your full moon in Scorpio. Thank you all so much. Have a blessed day and be well.